Welcome to another episode of the Wannabe Entrepreneur podcast. And if you are listening to this episode because you listened to my previous one interviewing Pieter Levels, welcome to the new listeners. It's really nice. It was great to interview Pieter, and I got so many people actually coming and listening to the episode. I got great feedback. And I know a lot of them will not continue because let's face it, they came to listen to Mr. Levels. But the fact that you are here, listen to me speaking, it really means a lot. So welcome. And to the old listeners, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to chat with you about my own journey, about the journey of other entrepreneurs, and about entrepreneur and bootstrapping. I really love this. It's really a passion of mine. And it's great to be able to speak with you. And I kid you not, I guess around maybe Friday or Saturday, I get super excited to do this episode in particular. I keep on having ideas, writing them down. So in today's episode, I want to keep on riding this Pieter Levels wave. And I want to speak more about my preparation for the meeting. What was it like to actually meet him? And also some of my thoughts about what we spoke about. So I have some cool stories to tell you about that. And besides that, I'll be talking about Chageit, specifically the fact that someone tried to buy it, and I want to tell you the story. And also a bit of some updates in the projects I'm working on, specifically in the offices and in this community, our virtual co-working space. We have something really cool starting from next week. So before I get started, I just want to give a warm welcome to the new members of the community, our virtual co-working space for bootstrappers. And it's funny because 4 people joined the community, but only 2 of them actually introduced themselves in the channel and are more active in the channel. And I kind of realized that this community started as a perk for the people that wanted to support the podcast. I don't want to do any advertisement, so this is kind of my way. People can buy me a coffee, or they can become kind of a Patreon, right? So they pay every month €4 to support this podcast. And I realized that there's people that just want to support a podcast and they don't necessarily want to be part of the community, which is completely fine. It's completely fine to just support the podcast. You can even join the community if you want and just be passive and see what the others are doing. And once you feel that you want to join in, it's fine, you can join. But it's also just fine to support the podcast. And the 2 people that introduce themselves are Kazi is a software engineer from Bangladesh, also an entrepreneur, and he's doing the 12 on 12 challenge. So 12 startups in 12 months. So super excited to follow his journey. And we also have Rochelle. Rochelle is a business and mindset coach for solo entrepreneurs or solopreneurs. And she is joining to meet other people and to grow her business together with the community. So super excited to have you both. And let's get started. I'm super excited. Let's get started with today's episode. So I started this podcast about 7 months ago. And as a lot of the old listeners might remember, I started with daily episodes, recording them on my phone. My idea was very simple, to record each of my bootstrapping day. And it worked really well in the beginning, but then I soon realized that it was a lot of work and it was really hard to keep great content, so I decided to reduce. But I started to interview other entrepreneurs. And my first interview, I was so nervous, especially my first interview with someone that I didn't know. So I first actually interviewed Wolfie, if you remember some of my French, which is a bit easier. But my first interview was with Giuseppe, and I didn't know him. I met him on Reddit, actually. And I was so nervous to interview someone for the first time because you feel like, in this case, you really feel like an imposter. And somehow it's true because it's your first time doing it. Like, you have no idea if you are good or not. And I kind of realized that it was somehow easy to get people on board, even though I didn't, or I don't even have a big audience, right? So before Pieter Levels, I had an audience of 80 people listening to me. I don't know about now. But it was easy because people, they like to talk, they like to share their journey, and it's also a good PR for them. They can even share this episode with their own audience, and it's also good for them. So I started to land bigger accounts, and I love having both. Like, I love having smaller accounts or people that don't have a lot of followers or are still in the beginning of bootstrapping, and I also love to have bigger ones because it's more challenging for me, I guess, to do a good work, because a lot of people have already listened to them, and I feel more nervous, and of course it grows my podcast much more. And one thing that my friend Wolfgang told me was that it was impossible to book Pieter Levels to the interview, because if you read his blog, it says that he's unavailable. So he doesn't go to any podcast but the Indie Hackers podcast. And when I was actually searching for interviews with him, there's not a lot. It's really, he wrote his book, and he appeared in a couple of Twitch interviews, and a couple of kind of on-site interviews that were recorded in Bali and in some co-working spaces. But besides that, there's not a lot. So I started to really believe that somehow was impossible. But the fact that he was interacting with me on Twitter gave me an extra hope. Wolfie told me that it would be impossible. He told me that he would pay me a beer. He would meet me somewhere, wherever I was. In this case, I'm in Portugal now. And he would buy me a beer. And I got it. I got Pieter Levels on the show. Everyone in the community was super excited. And this is really nice because Pieter Levels is kind of a celebrity around us, around the bootstrappers. But outside, like, let's be honest, no one knows him, right? So when I told my family, my friends, I mean, they wouldn't understand. But when I told in the community, when I told in our virtual co-working space, people were so excited and got me super excited as well. They were just copy pasting his blog post saying that he never meets with anyone else and so on. And I stopped listening to that after a while because I didn't want to get too nervous. Because when, for instance, I interviewed Arvid, which also is quite big, one thing that he liked about our interview is the fact that I was not afraid to question him. And if I kind of put someone in a pedestal, it's hard for me to say no or to cut things from the interview that I might think are not necessary. So I tried to kind of abstain myself from thinking on that, and I started preparing the interview. And I want to speak a little bit about this. And I guess this is kind of lifestyle and update on my project section. And if you are a new listener, I try to organize these episodes on lifestyle of an entrepreneur, update on my projects, and tips and tricks for entrepreneurs. So sometimes these sections kind of mix, and this is one of those cases because I want to tell you how it was for me to prepare and to actually meet Pieter. So first of all, I normally don't prepare interviews. I know it's a bit weird, but it's kind of my method. Of course, I read about the person. I try to see other interviews that they might have given in the past. But I mean, for me, it's easy because I'm genuinely interested in what they have to say, and I really want to learn from them because I'm a bootstrapper myself. So it's quite easy for me as long as I have a storyline. So let's say, for instance, if I'm interviewing someone about a project, my storyline is how they build the project. So from idea to business. So it's really easy to just do interviews, and then I just follow my curiosity. If you are speaking about something that is really cool, I just ask about it. With Pieter was a bit different because I didn't have a proper storyline, right? So there's already a lot of information about Nomad List, for instance, and about a lot of his projects. And I just didn't want to repeat that. I had the same struggle with KCD when I interviewed her. She's actually bigger, at least in terms of followers on Twitter than Pieter, but she has a lot of interviews. So back then, I guess I didn't do it properly because there was a lot of things that she had told before that she also told in my interview, which is also nice because, just because she spoke in other podcasts, it doesn't mean that the listeners of this podcast have actually listened to that. But maybe I should have tried to go more towards other topics, even though I loved the interview, and the interview has had a lot of great feedback. But with Pieter, I really tried to do something different. And I basically consumed everything that was available about Pieter Levels. So I listened to a lot of his interviews. I read his book. Actually, I read his book in the night before. I read like the full book, and I only skipped the parts when he was actually speaking about tools. The book is very simple to read, and it's really good. It's really good. As he says, he just dumped his brain into that book, and it felt like that. Like you, a lot of the questions I had that I thought I would ask him after reading the book, I realized that everything was in the book. So, I mean, I could still have asked these questions, obviously, because not a lot of people have read the book. But I felt, okay, let's go in another way. And I just wanted to really get to know Peter as a person, understanding his background and understanding his success. He is so, when he's talking and he says, for instance, the example of Nomadlist, right? He said that he was having some drinks with his friends, and by mistake, he kind of deployed the website, and it was like he didn't advertise it at all. He didn't even tweet about it, but then a lot of people found the website and it became viral. How crazy is that? That it became viral even without any, sharing. And back then, in Nomadlist, Peter was even not that big on Twitter. He had just started with his 12 on 12 challenge, so 12 startups in 12 months, and he got him some traction, but still, I mean, there was maybe, I don't even know, but maybe what, 30K or even less followers probably. And the fact that it became such a huge website with such a niche thing, right? It's digital nomads, especially back then. I don't know when it was, whether it's 2014 or 15, I don't know. I mean, people were not speaking about it so much. How did he become such a huge star, or how did the website had so much success? It's something that I don't understand. I really wanted to ask him. So that's kind of the things I prepared. I prepared a lot of questions. I asked also around in the community for people to give me suggestion of questions. I wrote everything down, and I was a bit nervous. I was not super nervous, and sometimes when I'm about to do a presentation, for instance, I feel that my heart is pounding. This time I didn't feel like that, but I was definitely more nervous than other interviews. I sat down. The interview was at 10, and a couple of hours earlier, he sent me a message or an email saying that he only had 1 hour of an interview, which always makes me a bit nervous, because if you listen to the interview I did with Peter, it's very casual. I just go with the flow. And if you have a time limit, especially if it's actually, he didn't tell me 1 hour, I think he told me like 40 minutes. So if you have, let's say, 40 minutes of interview, that's what happened with KCD, by the way, you really have to make sure that you squeeze everything you want in those 40 minutes. So I always become a little bit more nervous. And when he told me, okay, we only have 40 or 45 minutes, I was already thinking, okay, I really need to nail this. And at 10, I was waiting here in Zencaster, and it didn't show up. 10:05, he's still not here. 10:10, he's still not here. Like, oh my God, the hype. I had so much hype. I told everyone, and now he's not showing up. I was really getting nervous. And there's no way for me to contact him, because I can try to send him a DM, but most of times the DMs are closed. I tried to email him. So 10:15 is not here, and I'm already quitting somehow. At 10:20, he shows up. And he was super apologetic. He was like, so sorry. I kind of confused the times, because it was now in Thailand, and they thought there was different timings. I said it was completely fine. I was a bit worried, because if we only had 40 minutes before, now we only had 20. But he said, no, it's fine. I kind of messed up the times of everything, so we have like 1 hour and a half for the episode. I was like, okay, that's really nice. And he's super chill. Like, it's super, literally like chatting with a friend. And it was like, hey, I'm here. He showed his room, and he sat down on his bed, and because he normally works on his bed when he's in hotels rooms and so on. So it was super chilled, and that's really important as well. When you're interviewing someone that is super chilled, it really makes me also calm. And we just hit record, and we just chatted, and I went with the flow, and I think it became really interesting and really philosophical interview. And there are a couple of things that I found really, really interesting. First interesting thing was the fact that he was a musician before. So he was into the kind of, I think, techno scene and house, and he had his own. He was a DJ actually, making his own music. Really interesting the fact that he started immediately by doing his own music, because I quite often basically see artists and entrepreneurs, and we spoke about it, very much the same, right? Like if you are making your own, let's say for instance, as an artist, you can be a cover artist, right? And if you remember my interview back then with Derek, if you go back to the interviews, he was a cover artist, and as a cover artist is like, for me, like being a freelancer. If you're a software developer, you are your own boss, but you do what the others want you to do, right? So you build the app that they want you to build, or you sing the songs that they want you to sing. As an original artist, it's much, much harder to find an audience, but of course that you can grow much, much more and make much more money. So I immediately found interesting the fact that he was actually doing this entrepreneur thing, an original thing, an artist thing from the start. And he immediately got a lot of success with YouTube, which I found also absolutely amazing, because I also had a YouTube channel and I know how hard it is to get a lot of success. So it seems quite easy for him, right? Like to have this kind of success. And when I asked him if it would be better to do your first project as a side project, as a side gig, and having your main gig, your main job on the, happening, so that you still have this cushion, this money cushion, and you can still rely on the salary you're getting. He told me that it would be better to have it as a side project, because he did the same, because he was doing the YouTube and then he started Nomad List on the side. But for me, being a YouTuber, it's already being like a bootstrapper. You're already your own boss, and you're already doing a lot of things for your own. So I find it really interesting the fact that he didn't even consider the fact of him being a YouTuber a side gig or something special, I guess. I don't know, because imagine like in 2000, what was it, like 10 or something, being a YouTuber, it was something very, very original. Another thing that I found really interesting, and I don't know what you thought about it, was the fact that he kind of has this intuition for what people might like and want, and he tried to explain it as a way of speaking what the others have in their mind. You need to understand what the others are thinking and not saying. And this is really interesting, because I really believe that there are certain entrepreneurs, certain bootstrappers that are intuitive. They have this talent, and for anything, and probably you have your talent as well. If you start thinking about the things that you are good at without actually trying that much, maybe it's math, maybe it's playing soccer, maybe it's playing darts, whatever. Every one of us have these things that you are inclined to do, that you are better even without making as much effort as others. And I really believe that happens for entrepreneurs. That doesn't happen for me, unfortunately, because it's really hard for me to find success. But another great example is with Hendrik. And if you go back to the interview I did with him, he's the Bread Code. The Bread Code, he has a YouTube channel and he has a lot of success, but he's just a true entrepreneur. Everything he does, everything he touches turns into gold. And I don't understand why. It's funny, because when you try to really pinpoint why, you see that they have a different kind of personality, but there's a lot of other people with similar personalities and with similar knowledge that don't achieve what they achieve. So there's this kind of intuition. And I think the intuition is really into understanding where the market is going, understanding what people like, listening to people. And that's what Peter also said. What he mentioned was that he says things and then everyone was thinking the same. And I think it's a bit connected to not being afraid to dream. And the more you grow, the more kind of society pushes you in and says you cannot dream about certain things. As an example, he dreamed on not having a house and living in just following the summer, for instance, or following the countries that he loves. A lot of people would say, no, you need to settle in, you need to find a family, you need to find a job, otherwise it's too insecure, you cannot do this. but it just doesn't care because it's something that he loves, right? It's the same, and I mentioned this in an interview. It's the same with, for instance, Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk thinks about doing stuff that people would never dream of, right? Like going to Mars. Like maybe some of us would think about it, but if you say, let's say as a kid, right? And someone asks you what you want to do when you grow up, and you say, I want to build a ship that will take people to Mars. Like most people will laugh. They're like, oh, kids, it's not possible. But those that actually go to adulthood and still think about this, those are the ones that make it possible. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And Peter also says that he has built more than 70 products and only like 3 are super successful, or 4. But when I say super successful, is making 2 or 3 million a year, which is absurd, right? Like, I mean, imagine you making this amount of money. At some point, you don't do it for the money anymore. You just do it to change the world. And that's the last thing I want to say about this interview. The fact that he says that people from Venezuela are now moving to Portugal because the tool he's making, because of Rebase, that's amazing. I love this. And this is also what I really love about being an entrepreneur, about being a software developer. The fact that with only one laptop, you can actually change the world. It's amazing. I know that it's a fallacy because most of us won't change the world. It's extremely hard, and you need also some luck, some intuition, but you don't need to change the world. You might only change your community, your neighborhood, your family, even only for yourself. You can change your own life with just a laptop. I find this absolutely magnificent. And I think about it with Change It, right? Like my climate change app. I have people using it every day still, even though I'm not working it for a long time. And people actually, are changing and reducing their carbon footprint because a tool that I've made. This is absurd. You can really impact the world. Of course, I'm not going to fix climate change. We change it, at least as it is now. But there's people already learning about sustainability, people from all over the world, just because what I've built. And this is amazing. And this is really one of the big reasons why I pursue being a bootstrapper and being an entrepreneur. And that was basically it. That was the interview or my thoughts. I would love to listen to you. So DM me on Twitter. If you have some other thoughts, some other things that you find curious, that you find interesting, just let me know because I'm really interested in your opinion. So DM me on Twitter. I just speak with a lot of people on Twitter, and it's really, really nice. After the interview, the end of the interview was a bit hard for me because I kind of lost myself in the time. And when I asked him, he was like, okay, we have 3 minutes. And I was like, okay. So I tried to close it, and we didn't get to speak that much afterwards, but he did promise another interview. So maybe we'll continue. So let me know as well if you'd be interested in another interview with Peter. And now that I spoke about how it went, I just wanted to give you the stats, like the analytics, how many people listened to it so far, because I think this is really, really amazing. So my goal when I started preparing the launch of this interview was to reach 500 listens. And just for you to kind of understand, in my interviews, I have about 80 to 100 listens. After like a week or 2 weeks, it reaches that point. And with Casey the interview, I have reached 300 listens after maybe like a month or so. With Peter, I thought that since it was just my target, I thought that I would be able to reach the 500, which is crazy. Imagine reaching 500 listeners. Just for you to understand, these kind of episodes, these freestyle episodes, these monologues, they reach about 80 people. So 500 is actually a lot. And I still decided, and I have to say that, so the interview was last Thursday, so it's been less than a week, and I had 546 listens as of now. It's been amazing. Just the fact that I released this interview, just having the name Pieter Levels, even before he actually shared it on Twitter, I had already gained so many listens and so much great feedback, just because I had his name. So this is really cool, and you can really see that there is not a lot of episodes. There is not a lot of content on Pieter Levels. With KCT is different. There's a lot, so it's harder. But with the Mr. Levels, there isn't. So you can really see that people are craving for this kind of content. And I was a bit unlucky because I released my interview at the same time as his interview with Indie Hackers podcast. I was really trying to avoid this, but it ended up happening because I think 2 weeks ago he said that he had been interviewed by Indie Hackers and Indie Hackers podcast, and I asked them when is it going to be out, and they told me Wednesday, so last Wednesday. I waited for Wednesday, nothing. So I thought, okay, maybe it's coming the next week, so it means I need to release mine this week. I need to be the first. But it ended up releasing it basically at the same time, actually, on Thursday, and it's a great interview. It's really nice interview. I listened to it as well. That will be the part 2 this week, actually, maybe tomorrow or the day after. And fortunately, they spoke about different topics. I mean, we spoke about such deep conversations, that it would be hard to be the same kind of topic. So that it was nice. Still, maybe I might have lost a couple of listeners because of that, but it's completely fine. By the way, the reason why Pieter is doing these interviews now is to promote this new company, Rebase. So I do think that that's kind of the reason why he decided to speak with me. A lot of people were saying, Thiago, your podcast is amazing, that's why he's speaking with you. No, I think it's also mostly because of Rebase. But of course, the fact that he accepted, he probably listened to me before and so on. So that's really, really nice. And so 546 listens, really, really nice. I got about, I think, 30 new followers on Twitter so far. Really cool. A lot of people coming to me saying that they liked the interview. So a lot of great feedback. That's really nice. And my website, I think someone shared it on Facebook. Maybe it was Pieter, because Pieter was also sharing it in a lot of his social networks. So this is really nice. I love when the people that I interview also help me and help themselves to promote, because it's really great. There was a time that I was having like 30 or 40 people at the same time in my website, which for me is really, really great. I know there's people that have much more, but for me it's really great to have so many people actually coming. And I'm super excited to see from these people how many will actually become full-time listeners of the podcast. And let's now speak about Chageit, because I told you that I had a meeting with someone that was interested in buying Chageit. I was very reluctant to even believe that this was true, because Chageit is not in the level that I believe that can be sold. I know that there's a lot of people that sell their projects even before revenue. I learned this term, pre-revenue, but they can do this kind of stuff, and it's possible companies that just want to buy the software. But I don't know. I felt that Chageit was still not in that level, and definitely not for the users, right? Because at this moment I'm having like 10, 15 users per day. So I didn't believe that people were actually, lining up to buy Chageit. But I was still excited to speak and have my first meeting with someone that is actually in this medium and is buying and selling startups. So the company's name is Falcon Rivers. And we started the meeting super chilled. John was his name. I think he's the CEO, and super chilled guy. And we're just chatting and did some chit chat in the beginning. And then I kind of presented Chageit. I presented the numbers. And when he asked me about the revenue, he's like, so how much money are you making? And I was like, we have affiliate model and people can buy and I get a percentage of the sustainable products they buy. And I don't know, maybe €3 a month or €5 a month. I mean, he didn't laugh at me, but he did say that maybe it's better to call it pre-revenue. It's the buzzword that sells much better. So if you have a company that is not making that much money, just say that you are pre-revenue when you're trying to sell it or to pitch it. And that's something that I've learned. So Chageit is pre-revenue, and I kind of pitch it, and he did tell me that his investor. So the company is kind of a mediator, right? So it finds investors or people that are interested in buying, and finds companies and matches them. And he did tell me that the person that was interested on buying is interested in companies that maybe make half a million or something like this. So completely out. And I find it really interesting that they thought that Changeit could make half a million. So it was not him that actually selected Changeit. I think it was his assistant. So maybe they definitely didn't check it properly, but still, it was a really nice conversation. It somehow validates the fact that this is a topic that people are interested in, because first of all, when you search for climate change app on the Play Store, Changeit will show up. So it kind of shows that there's still not a lot in the market and we can do a lot there. And yeah, people are interested. People are interested in investing in acquiring these kind of companies. And I just need to go back and invest on Changeit. I have other ideas and I need to do it quickly. So maybe from next week on, or even still this week, I really need to go back. And it's a topic that I really love. In the end, it was another network, another contact, and another experience, which is always nice. And I was not sad because I was kind of already expecting this. So still, it's a great story to tell here in the podcast, right? And yeah, last but not least, I want to speak about the last two projects I'm working on. I'm doing so much stuff now. Maybe I'm doing too much. I'm working on Indie Offices, as I told you, which is basically a tool that allows people that use Slack to create a virtual office. I started it because we are using it on our co-working space and people kind of like it. So I thought, okay, let's make a package out of it, which I did. And it's my first B2B company. So far, I shared it on Reddit and I got a couple of people interested and signing up. But no, and I also got actually Anthony from Indie Worldwide. I even interviewed him. He has a community, a Slack community, and he installed it and he tried it out. He says that it's cool. He says that the price it's okay. So it's $25, at least for now, the first price per month. And we are going to try it out on Thursday on the product hunt. What is it, like Indie Cat Awards? I don't remember what it's called, but it's basically giving prizes to the best 2021 products. So yeah, we are going to test it out then, which is really nice. I'm now in this phase where I just want to test the product. And I've been reaching out to companies by email, cold emails and DMs and people that I know, asking them to try them out. And yeah, I just want to collect feedback. I've been also working the product to make it more usable. And I'll keep you updated. There's not a lot to say here. But yeah, my strategy as a B2B now is to reach out to people individually and try to build a product that I know people like. And then I'll go to a proper launch, maybe with Product Hunt and proper Reddit and everything. But now I'm just getting, clients and see if I can make some money out of that. And yeah, last but not least, about the community, something that I want to talk about. We are going to start from next week on a 1-month hackathon. And it's not the traditional hackathons. What we are going to do is there's one idea and we are all going to implement it together. So Maxwell, he actually had the idea and even the idea of this project. And we are going to have marketeers, designers, developers, all of us were going to work together. We are all very busy, so we don't expect that everyone can put a lot of time. So that's why we are making it 1 month. And each week we are going to put a couple of hours to build this product together. And we are going to learn. This is kind of a workshop, a hands-on workshop. And we are kind of learning by doing. And you can pick whatever you want to do. We can pick the language you want to code in, the marketing plan, the tools we want to use. So if you want to join us, you can still do. And there'll be a landing page in the show notes of this episode. You can go and check it out. Yeah, you can just join the co-working space. It's €4 or $4.6 per month. And you can join this hackathon. It will start in the 1st of February, which, if I'm not mistaken, is next Tuesday. So yeah, make sure to join us. And if you are not joining, yeah, I will give you updates on this project in this podcast and also on Twitter and so on. So I'm super excited about it and see how it will go. And that's it for the project updates. If you allow me to speak a little bit about the lifestyle of an entrepreneur and some of my thoughts that I have been having recently, I feel that I have peaked with the interview with Pieter Levels, and it was kind of my 2022 goal to do it, and I reached it super early, which is really nice. And I got a huge number of listens, which was also amazing. But what now, right? So what can I keep on going? When will I reach the same level of listens that I reach with Peter? So I kind of start thinking what should be the next steps, what should be the people that I should try to interview, and of course that I will keep on interviewing smaller entrepreneurs because I think it's really important, and I am one of them. And I still want to interview also people that have a lot of followers because this will also help the podcast to grow. But it's hard to know whom should I interview now. And one thing that Wolfie, my friend that I've spoken so much in this podcast, and is probably the only person I've listened to actually all the episodes, he told me that now maybe it's time to find other types of interviews. I've interviewed a lot of people from Twitter, a lot of people that are bootstrappers, and maybe it's time to find some other kind of bootstrappers, some artists, maybe some musicians, and it's something that I also am very interested in doing. I think it's really interesting to understand more the art side, people that started their own bands or painting or something like this, and photographers. So I might do this. I might try to find people in this realm. Of course, that I will always go to bootstrapping, and I have a couple of interviews lined up in the bootstrapping world, but I will try to go more towards that. And immediately, my mind goes to let's interview Elon Musk, or let's interview, I don't know, some big artist, Ed Sheeran. I mean, I'm not saying that it's really impossible, because again, if I've learned something from the interview with Peter, is that you really need to dream, but you need to work to get there. You cannot immediately think, for instance, when I first started this podcast, I couldn't get Pieter Levels or KCD right away because I was just starting. But as long as I keep on growing, as long as I keep on getting better, maybe one day I'll be in the position where Ed Sheeran would like to be interviewed by the wannabe entrepreneur to tell his journey, to tell how he got to where he is now, right? Maybe Dua Lipa would like to be interviewed to talk about how she got to be an artist, a world famous artist. So I think it's really important, and I would love to have these conversations with people. Of course, that I will not immediately get there, and I'm just trying to think, what should I do next? Will the podcast last until then? Because if I'm not able to make money, then I probably won't have time to invest as much in the podcast as well. So yeah, some of my thoughts are, okay, I've reached this. This is great. What a peak. Was this the peak, right? Am I now just going down? And yeah, just some of the thoughts that are coming to my mind. It's not affecting me that much mentally, so it's not dragging me down that much, which is nice. It just pops out in my head from time to time now since I interviewed Peter. Yeah, that's it for the lifestyle of the entrepreneur. Now I just want to give you the last section, the tips and tricks for entrepreneurs and bootstrappers. This week, I didn't particularly try new tools, but someone recommended one tool for podcasters that seems really interesting. Its name is Auphonic, and it basically normalizes the sound of a track. And it's really great, specifically for people that are doing interviews or there's more than one input, and it normalizes, making sure that everything is in the same volume. But Wolfgang was the one that, by the way, recommended this, and he told me that what this also does is it segments the input track into multiple segments and normalizes the segments between each other. So even if you're talking and sometimes you just get close to the mic or change the mouth or something, or start speaking louder, it normalizes that too. And I didn't try it, but they told me it's great, and it makes a great job. So yeah, howphonic.com, and I will link it in the description. And the other recommendation I would give you is to read the Maker's Book, the Make Book, actually, the Make Book from Pieter Levels, and you can find it on makebook.io. Yes, you can find it on makebook.io, and it's a great book. You can read it super fast, and especially if you are a beginner bootstrapper, or even if you are not. It's basically, as I said in the beginning, the brain dump of Pieter Levels into a book. A lot of tips, a lot of tricks. Even if you are not a developer, you'll find really useful stuff there. So I would really recommend for you to read the Make Book. And yeah, that's the tips and tricks for this episode. I'm sorry that they're not very long. Maybe next week I'll try to actually invest more into learning a new tool and yeah, bringing it to the episode. And that's it. That's it for today's episode. I hope it was fun to listen to. And you already know, if you have suggestions, you want to chat with me, you can follow me on Twitter. If you want to make sure that this podcast keeps going, you want to support it, you can buy me a coffee or become a member. And if you do become a member, you also get to join our virtual co-working space for bootstrappers, a place where we work together in our own projects, but we support each other and mentor each other. It's really nice. And we are starting this project that I told you about, this hackathon for 1 month that we'll be working together on it. So if you want to join, yeah, now is the time. And yeah, that's it. Besides that, if you can give a nice review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that would mean the world. And of course, sharing this podcast with your friends. This was another Wannabe Entrepreneur, and see you next Tuesday for the interview. Don't take life too serious. That's my new motto. Just chill. Carpe diem.